What's up, guys? Hades here. So, IB League playoffs are here. It's time to make new builds. It's time to adapt and learn. And I'm going to make this video all about how you create something new out of the unknown. Okay? I will not be giving you the answers, like specific builds to copy. That is not the point of this video. I think that's unethical. What I will be giving you is the tools and the mindset of how to create a very strong meta-like team. Now, it's going to come in 3 different forms. And the first one is finding what is new. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to look at what's new. If you're brand new to playoffs, they add new heroes that are available for you to use. You have options like Ragnar to combo with Merlin to give him that bonus magic damage. You have Dido to combo with water to give you that bonus armor. These are heroes that were not available before. If you want to make something like fire, instead of being stuck with Ashoka and Wu, you now have 2 new options, being Cyrus and Seondeok. These have been meta staples for 4 seasons. They have been on the backs of winning teams many times. Both the fire and the water have been very strong. Now you have a few other options that aren't as great, in my opinion. I have not found any value in Arash. I don't think he fits the meta or the mold of this format. I have not seen an Atlanta do well at all. I am not a big fan. I think she's really restricted by her artifact, and we don't get access to artifacts, and that's another thing you have to think about in this format. And then Hammurabi. I do like Hammurabi. I think he's one of the best mages in the format, but Thunder isn't always meta because water and fire have kind of dominated this format. Now, the second thing we need to talk about is metas, because you need to know what the metas have been to be able to either match it or counter it. And this is going to be point number 2. Now, just to give you an example, these are almost exactly what I used throughout the first 10 games. I had a fire con team with a water secondary. I had a full water team with a fire con secondary, and I made a few adjustments. I haven't actually changed the skills yet, but. And then I also had a full water team with a full fire with a weird Richard, just as an experiment. And the thing is, I'm always experimenting. If I want to try something, I make one of my 3 builds something to try. I make one of my 3 builds something I think is going to match the meta. And I make one of my 3 builds something I think will counter the meta. And then I can swap between them in a match based on what it calls for, because we don't know what enemies are going to build. And you're not going to know what my team's going to build, because we're not going to reveal that, right? You have to come prepared with all 3 every match and have something ready and prepared in advance. That's part of the game, is building something in advance and knowing the metas. And I'll tell you right now, the meta in the playoffs is going to look something like this team, except it's going to be full fire. It would look something like this, right? You're going to get a full fire team with Seondeok and Cyrus. I've seen Wu and Cyrus be good. I've seen Seondeok and Wu be good. But it's going to be something full fire. And of course, you can throw Wrinkle in there, and you can switch Cyrus with Khan. You can switch Seondeok with Khan. Like, it's really up to you. You're going to see a bunch of water teams. This full water is very good. Guess what? When people find Seondeok to be best, well, Dido is a counter to her. She gives your whole team armor while she's doing all physical damage. Also, there's no wound on this team. There's no con, which means the water dragon isn't hindered and you get that full heal effect, right? The reason people run fire con is to counter water, because water is actually the best. But then when you have fire con, then fire con becomes the best, and there's this whole cycle of what becomes best, and that's why you need variety. So this full water team, very strong. This full fire team, very strong. And then the rest of the teams are a little hard to figure out, right? There is, of course, wind, earth, and thunder available, but then you have to come up with theory. Why would you ever build those as a main or as a first option or second option? And there could be some decent ideas around it. Now, let's talk about wind first. Would you ever build a wind main into water fire meta? Well, wind is countered by fire, but wind does have kin who can counter water in theory. So that's not a terrible option into like a wind player, but if you're playing it just for that, the other team's gonna probably counter you. And in playoffs, you can have two main teams because all the new skills are out. Same with earth. Earth is a great counter to water. It elementally counters it, but you don't really have wound. You could squeeze in a con, maybe for Cleo or Xeno. Those are some options. And then earth does fine into fire. Earth is actually a pretty decent option. It's been a decent option as a second. I've seen it a decent option as a main, actually. And if earth ever becomes good, then thunder becomes good, because thunder gets the element advantage on earth. Thunder gets the wound from con on water. But then thunder is, I'd say thunder is soft countered by fire, because the fire dragon goes first and the thunder dragon does its defensive skill first. Oops. This one. You do the reduced damage and then your damage. And in this game mode, you have very low troops, and they're only tier 5, so they die very fast to these level 10 dragon skills. So going back to things that are new, we have the brand new KVK skills available to us. We have Assembly Charge, we have Abundant Spirit, and we have Unforeseen Attack. Now, I don't know how well these are going to do. I've reviewed these in the past. I've talked about them in tier list videos. I'm not a huge fan of them. However, not many people have them or use them. And that means there's a lot of experimentation to be had. I think Assembly Charge could have some good value on some of these heroes. I agree. Probably more like Charles, Hannibal, Attila, and Hippa, and William. I wouldn't be using on someone in the back. I do think Abundant Spirit has some potential on a few mages, increasing the likelihood of something like Spell Disintegrator from 50 to 60% every 3 seconds, on things like Heavy Lifter going from 50 to 60% after an ultimate. Heavy Lifter is a big hit or miss skill, but if you make it more of a hit, higher chance to hit, you're going to be more successful. But again, I don't have a bunch of data to back these up. This is theory. Every single season, I have built my teams off of theory, and it almost always works. And if it doesn't work, that's why we have a backup. And then Unforeseen Attack. Every 6 seconds after the battle starts, there is a 60% chance to deal physical damage to a random enemy by prioritizing backline. I'm not a big fan of random, but 500 damage to someone in the back is quite valuable with a 60% chance. This could be decent. Again, I'm not sure. It's probably worth a try somewhere. Maybe have one person try it or a couple people try it. You never know what you might need. So the big thing, my first point, is thinking about what's new. So you have the new Immortals, you have the new skills. How do they combo with these Immortals? How do they combo with these skills? Second is meta. We talked about meta. You have water, full fire. Where does con fit in? Where does wound and kin and con fit in? And then where does earth and thunder fit in? I am a big fan of water fire. I use them all season. I used them last season. I used a bit of earth, and I used a bit of thunder. I had them all as a main. The only one I've never truly used as a main is wind, because fire is everywhere, and fire absolutely crushes the wind, especially the fire combo. So there's meta. So how do you counter meta? We've talked about it a little bit. If those are meta, if you're gonna have a team like Merlin and no wound and a water dragon, well, you're gonna want some wound to counter that, right? You're gonna want to have thunder con, or maybe wind with kin. You can also soft counter things with skills, right? There are skills that do the things we need them to do to counter them, right? I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Poison Thorn, right? If there is an Attila running crazy you can reduce its healing and focus it with Poison Thorn. Like, there's almost always a way around it. No Escape becomes extremely meta. There's no Fufei in this format. There's no Chaos Immortals, right? All of these things become so much more valuable in their own way because of what we have now. So, I implore you, go experiment. Have 3 builds. Make one your counter meta, make one your meta, and make one your experimentation. And go crazy and talk about it with your friends and talk about it with your alliance and look at what worked and what didn't work last year. All these things are really going to change the way you play and the way that your team is going to perform, especially when you start understanding reports and how they work and how, you know, what worked, what didn't. Can we switch this? This was the best build. Can we copy it? Can we beat it? I always think that you should try and beat a March, not just copy a March, because there's so much variation in this game. There's 12 skills, which is so much. That's one of the reasons I love this game. And there's so many options. All of these have their own unique spot and place to go. And I promise there's always a counter for everything. So, if you guys like getting in the mindset of someone who's won the IB League Championship 3 times, this is how I prepare a build. This is how I prepare for a match. This is how I'm preparing for the next week or 2 weeks. And I probably won't make anything fantastic this week, but I'll figure some things out and I'll make something even better the next week. So if you like these kind of videos, leave a comment, leave a like, and I will catch you guys in the next one.